Hey guys, welcome back to the CARF L39 Skygate build video series. If you guys have any questions, comments, make sure you list them below. I'll do my best to answer them. Also, if you have not subscribed to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below. When you hit the subscribe button, also hit the bell and you'll be notified of new videos from this build. Also, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, and thanks so much for tuning in. Alright guys, so the next step in the manual is the wings, and the first step talks about the aileron servo setup. So it's fairly well covered in there. Everything is pretty straightforward, but just so you're aware, I'll try and get this on camera here, but the aileron surface hinge is actually removable. So if you look in the center there, you can see that little loop. You can hook onto that with something, pull it out, and the entire brass tube comes out. And what happens there is once you get that tube out, then you're able to take the aileron off. So I've got the tube about halfway out, and you can see the back end there is loose at that point. So that's our next step here, and then we're going to work on installing the servo horn, or the servo. All right guys, so the aileron's removed. It actually takes a lot of movement of that pivot or the brass tube in order to get that out. So I'll scroll out here a little bit so you can see how far you have to pull that tube out. So you're almost pulling it out to the edge of the wing, or the very last section there, to in order to get it out far enough to pull the aileron out. So nice, very nice setup here. The manual does talk about screwing that little loop into the rib of the wing, but you'd need a really long screwdriver to screw that in. So I need to figure something out on how to secure that. So we'll figure that out though. Anyways, so that's that. We're going to work on getting the aileron servo set up on this guy. So the servo mounts in there, and then the actual control rod comes out through there. So it does poke out of the wing. So it does poke out of the wing just a little bit, and there's the horn itself that it attaches to. So that is our next step, and we're going to get that aileron servo mounted and try and get that set up. Alright guys, so the manual is a little bit confusing. It shows the servo setup there in the picture, and then here in the next step it talks about making sure that the servo arm is mounted perpendicular, so that the servo center is perpendicular to linkage, which I think means it's going to go like this. So we're going to trial fit that and see if it works. Alright guys, ready to mount the aileron servo. Now this is a little bit tricky. I did open up the hole slightly there. Probably went a little bit too excessive, but anyways, I might have to do a little bit more sanding in this area. It shows it in the manual, but we'll see. I can still sand it with the linkage in place. And also I left the linkage a little bit long compared to my initial measurements. So what I can do if it's too long is just thread it in and get it adjusted to the right size. So mounting the servo, I finally figured out that the servo arm needs to point towards the upper side of the wing. So on this particular plane, the underside is silver, the top is black, so it's pointing towards the black side of the wing. So you do want the servo horn mounted at 90 degrees, just like the first picture shows in the manual. Then basically what you're doing is, some people have talked about doing a Phillips screwdriver or setting something up so it's like 1.5 2 feet long, so you can reach through the top of the wing and get it in there. But I'm going to try and do this and show you guys here. Okay, so if you take a screwdriver like this, you can actually tuck it up inside the wing and you'll be able to get it in there and tighten it up. Now if you want to go any tighter or need to go any tighter, you could grab this with pliers and tighten that up as well. So that's how I'm tightening those screws up, and basically taking them with my needle nose pliers, small ones, placing them in the right hole, and then getting the screwdriver up there in the right spot, and the screws seem to go in fairly easily. They're still very, very solid, and I will tighten those up a final amount once I get them all mounted. So that's how this is happening. All right, guys, so I found a great tool for the job. These screws are a little bit easier to get to because you have this space to work in. Those ones are a bit of a nightmare because this lip is in the way. Anyways, so a little ratchet with various Phillips drivers works really, really well. The longer one works good for getting into these screws, and the short one works really well getting it into the back ones. So awesome little tool. I was able to get them both started with the standard screwdriver, or a smaller screwdriver, tucking it up there like I showed you, but then just getting the final tightening done was done with the ratchet. All right, guys, so the control rod that runs through the wing and then through the aileron here, basically there's a little loop on there that I've showed you before, and the instructions show that when you're done, one end of the brass aileron hinge, blah 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 blah, to secure the hinge to with a countersunk sheet metal screw. So it doesn't really show you good instructions in here. And it's not going to be super easy to do it from this side. I don't think. Maybe I'll give it a try on that side. But what I did was basically create a tool. I just took all my socket adapters, which I was using on the little socket before. We have to put the Phillips screw in. And I just took a wooden dowel, and made a square on the end that'll plug in there. So hopefully this will make it easy to get the surface in there. The aileron's all hinged and put back together. Really, really nice, clean control surface there, so almost invisible, and works great. So also with the X-Bus servos, I was able to adjust the travel. So for now, I've limited it to 40 millimeters up and 40 millimeters down, and I think we're going to be running less than that, but I'll have to check the specs online. But anyways, that's where it's at, and I'm going to hopefully come through the end here and get that control rod fastened. All right, guys, so next is the flap servo on the right wing. So I've got the stage 1 or up flaps set to about there, stage 2 and stage 3. So that's all set up. I think this is an 1.5 or 1.25 servo horn. Anyways, that's the linkage set up there. So bolt through the back, nut on the front, and the clevis that goes on the flap side. So that is pretty straightforward as far as installing it. I don't know if my length of the rod is correct, but we'll install that now and see what happens. All right, guys, so everything went well with the servo for the flap. It's just that opening right there for the rod to come through needs to be lengthened a little bit, so it needs to be brought more towards the bottom of the wing surface. Otherwise the rod interferes, so I just need to open that up a little bit. Super easy to open up. You can use a Dremel bit, but it's just kind of foam, so it's pretty easy to cut away with an X-Acto knife, and so I'll open that slot up a little bit. All right, guys, so the flaps all done. Now one thing is the servo horn could be a heck of a lot smaller than they recommend in the manual. So in the manual they recommend 1.5, 1.5 inch servo arms, which is what that is. And I mean, at full flap, to give you an idea here, there's fully retracted, right? At full flap, that's going to be the movement. So definitely could have been a 1-inch servo arm. I could move it down one position, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure I'm going to do that. So anyways, that is the flap system, and works good. Gets a good amount of movement out of it, and that's it. So I have added the servo extension to the aileron servo. So we're making custom servo wires for this entire build. So this is the flap servo, this is the aileron servo, and then we're going to have the gear and also the brakes. So it's going to be on a four servo connector that goes on there. I can't remember the name of them, but they came in that parts order today. And so this will be the connection point for the wing, and then we might bring the lights over to this point, or we might run the lights through here. And for the lights, we've got that same connector that's probably going to use, I think I ordered a 9-pin connector. We'll see what we're going to use anyways. That's where the lights is going to mount to, is right in this area, I believe. So anyways, that is where we are at. All right, guys, so moving on to the lights for the wings. Basically, we've got obviously the spotlight here, which we've talked about. Now, this piece comes with the kit. These little plastic pieces come in the kit looking like this. So that outer circle fits perfectly onto the tip light. So what I did was high-saw that onto the lighting setup. So you can see it there. It fits perfectly. I think that's going to be a nice setup for the way that's going to be installed. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to permanently mount this. I'll probably put maybe 3 screws holding this light in, instead of, obviously the other option is to put some adhesive on the back here and stick it to the surface. Downside of that is we have to wreck the adhesive, maybe destroy something to ever get it off. So if I use screws, it'll be look really well. I think it'll look just fine, and then the cap goes over top of this. So the other thing to think about here is the marker light. So basically, I'll try and get a good shot here. The tip light's going to sit in that far, right? And just comes to the front edge of this kind of scale marker light area, and then here's the marker light setup. So I'm going to the marker light's going to be mounted in here somewhere, not going to interfere with the tip light. So just finding a good spot for it. Here's the cover for the marker light. So when this is mounted, this aluminum piece here sits outside of the wing. This all sits inside, and the cover itself sits over top, and it's going to sit over top of those aluminum pieces. So essentially what we need to do is figure out a good spot to mount the lens cover. So if you look at it here, I'm thinking somewhere probably around there, and just because that aluminum is going to sit flush, I can cut a nice channel out of here, and then this will sit there nicely. I think it's going to be a little bit of trial and error, and whatever I figure out on this wing, I'll just match to the other wing. So I always find that when I'm doing the first wing of a plane, it takes quite a bit longer. You're figuring things out, and then when you do the second wing, obviously it goes a lot quicker because you got the template for it. So all right, guys. So still working on the main wings, and just trying to figure some stuff out here. And I thought I would touch base on the wiring. So I was trying to figure out, I guess, where to run the wires, because we have the wires for the aileron and the aileron and flap surfaces. and we're going to have two power wires from the gear, so the gear up, down, and also the brake. And then we're also going to have two light wires as well, so they're going to be mounted in this section and come down the front of the wing. So initially in my other clips of this, I was thinking about putting one of the wire sections for the lights here and probably the main wing connection here. Now the problem with that is, if you look at the way the airframe's laid out, so the front of the wing is this section where we'd have the lights going through. The rear part of the wing is here, right, in this section. Now the downside is we've got these massive gear doors and kind of some stuff interfering in here. So I was kind of giving that a second thought. We still could have them coming through. I just don't like the idea of having all those wires mounted to the top there, and then also having to figure out where to mount them to in the wood structure so they don't interfere with the gear. So yeah, there's a few things going on in there that not overly excited about putting the wires there. So I think if we just plan on running all the wires through this section at the front of the wing, we're going to be a lot more successful. There's going to be nothing else interfering there, and it'll be easier to connect it. So that's the plan as it sits right now. And so as I work on these wings, I'm going to make sure I run all the lights and all the wires for everything else in this section on the front of the wing. So I got to redo these a little bit, but it should be fairly easy still. So, and that is where we are at with this wing right now. Now I think the next thing I'm going to do is get work on this lighting here, just so we can get the remainder of the wing sorted out. Now I'm going to mount this in the front of the wing as discussed, but first we're going to work on getting this thing mounted, the side light, and that'll be the next step for this wing. Alright guys, so this is what I've decided on for the light. Basically, I gotta stop saying basically, that's what. Okay guys, so this is what I've decided on for the light. You can see how it has to be flush mounted here, and that is how we've got it mounted. So what we could have done is we could have put the reflector on. This is kind of hard to capture, but could have put the reflector on this way. This is the green light, those are the white lights. The downside is, if we were going to put the reflector on, or I guess the lens cover is probably the better thing to call it, and put it in this direction, it doesn't fit, or doesn't go very well on this angled piece. And part of it is you can see the angle there, and it just doesn't work. So the only way we could have used this lens cover and kept the bulge of the green going forward is to mount it back here. Now that would have been okay. There's a former in the wing tube, or the tube here, right at this section right there. So it would have fit there, but I did want it more on the front. So when we flip it around, it's shaped properly, and all these lights are visible no matter what. So I think that's going to be just awesome. Way better mounting there, and that's where I wanted it anyways. So I'll show you what I did here with the light. So I used a small Dremel carbide bit, that guy there, and put the lens cover on there. I took a Sharpie when the lens cover was on there, outlined it. The Sharpie does come off after. You can see just a slight residue there in the paint. So mark that, drew a center line, and used my Dremel to Dremel it out. And you have to put a fairly substantial hole, or a larger hole section in the front or somewhere in there, just so the capacitor, which is inside there, just so that capacitor can fit through. So that's all mounted. I don't think I'm going to high all that in place. I'm probably just going to use like shoe goop, something like that. But this needs to come out now because we need to fish the wire going all the way to the front so we can fish all the lines for the lights through. And we do need to extend all those light lines as well. So I need to figure those out. I'll probably add the extensions first, and then I'm going to fish that wire through so then I can mount all the lights and everything. That's the next step. Alright guys, so the lighting kit came with some extra wire. Just a little, probably 10-12 feet of this the heavy duty wire. So we'll be using that on the wings. So we needed to extend the tip light and also the marker light. So there's 2 wires here, 2 wires here, and then a single wire which controls the green LED or the red LED depending on which side you're working on. So what I did was I took and cut 3 pieces of this extra wire, measured out so we had a nice little pigtail at the end of the wing so we can put our connector on there, split one of the wires or unwound it so we could use orange on one side, black on the other side for the single wire. So just so you guys are aware, these extensions on the wing are about 15, 16, 17, about 18 inches long, and that'll give plenty of extra space coming off the wing. So if this is the edge of the wing, we've got about this much coming off for a pigtail to mount the connector to. So I want to make sure we have enough there. And so that's the wires extended. Now basically what I'm going to do is, so what I do for running my my stuff in my planes is I use this flexible wire. Comes in a roll. I think it's just like tin. I think you'd use it for fencing or something like that. I've got a couple rolls of it up there. Comes in rolls like that, and super handy to have around. Very, very flexible, but nice because you can shape it into different shapes. So what I do is usually put a little hook on the end, and depending on where it needs to go to, this is the one that I was using for the rudder, so that's why it's got such a small hook. I don't know if this one's going to be long enough, but that's the next step, is I'm going to feed this through the wing, get it up to the tip, and then we'll route all the wires through the wing. Alright guys, so there's the tail end of the wire at the wing root, and here's the piece at the end. So it took about maybe 3-4 minutes to get it fished through. You just got to get the right angle on it and come around here, and I'll show you guys basically what you're dealing with inside there. So there's that former you can see. You just got to be able to turn the corner enough to get it around the corner to be able to come through the tip. I mean, if you had a really long pair of pliers, they'd need to be about probably 8 inches long. You might be able to reach in there and grab it, but wasn't too bad. Fairly straightforward. So now what I'll do is attach a string to here, pull the wire back through, and then I'll have a string that I can mount all the lights in, and then run all the cables down to the root of the wing. All right, guys, so that is all run. There's more wire that I can pull out, so I can pull out probably that much. So that's in place. That one's in place. There we go. And that is basically what we're doing. So I'm probably going to put some adhesive on this guy. Just going to use some... Man, my desk is a mess. Just going to use some goop. I think that'll hold just perfect. And I don't think we need to go too crazy on the high sol or anything like that. And this should be plenty for what we need it for. Maybe we should use high sol, I don't know. But then the only problem if we use high sol is if we have to get this light out, it's going to be an absolute disaster down the road. And I don't think we want to be doing that. So yeah, I'll use this on the marker lights, and may use screws, may use adhesive on this tip light. We'll see. All right, guys, not a great picture of what's the final result here, but I used goop on both of them, and obviously just taped them in place till it cures. What I did on this top light was pulled the light up, run goop along the side, drop it in place, and the goop all oozed out. And then I took the reflector, mounted the reflector on, took my finger, and wiped it all off around the perimeter so it's nice and clean, and then taped it down. So if we get a nice little reflection there, we might be able to see just right there, you can see maybe the goop line. So once it's dried, it'll be nice and clear and just a nice crisp line. So happy with the result on that. All right, guys, so I've pulled the tape off from when these got set in place, and they look absolutely awesome. So the shoe goop worked really well, and really nice clean lines as well too. So really impressed with that. That is essentially the light system on here. I don't think I'm going to put the reflector on yet, or the cap on yet. I'll wait till maybe wait till I need something to do and see if there's any hiccups. I might put it on, but we'll see. Anyways, I'm rerouting the wires, and I'm also going to redo the flaps. So before we talked about how the flap was set up as per the manual, and there's hardly any movement in the servo arm. So I'm going to go to that inner servo hole. It's not going to make a huge difference, but it's enough to be significant. So I'm going to switch that up. I've already disconnected the flap linkage, and then while I have the servo out, I am going to take the flap servo wire, and it's going to be routed in this direction here. So I'm going to have to put a short extension on it. You can see the extension here for the Aileron servo, and I've already run the feed wire back here, which is what I'll do is I will feed also the flap servo back here, and then back with the Aileron servo. So that's the next things in the works. Just got notification today that the gear has been processed. The order's been processed. Not sure if it's shipped yet, but it is on the way, which is perfect because that eliminates any of the holdups that we have coming forward. All right, guys, so the right wing anyways, is basically almost 100% done, other than mounting of the gear, which obviously we're waiting for. So the wires have been moved from this side, run that direction. So they're in there, and there's that one. So I'm going to put the panel on this spot now. Let's see, I changed the servo hole for the flap. So now we get a little bit more movement. Let's see if I can show you here. A little bit more movement out of the flap. Not tons, but it's definitely enough to hopefully give it more strength as well too, more torque, because it's closer to the servo center. So all the wires are run here. The gear wires are also going to come out of here, and that's where we'll have our two connections in basically this spot right here, which I talked about earlier, being in the front part of the fuselage. Okay, so this wing is basically done. I'm going to put the cover on here. I think I might put the clear cover on the tip, and that will be the end of the right wing. Left wing, I'm not going to video any of it. I'm just going to do it, and then I'll show you guys some pictures of the left wing when it's done, or some video of the left wing. Unless I run into something weird, which then I'll show you some video of the left wing. But that's basically the next step. I will show you the lens cap on, and then the plate on, but other than that, we will be moving on to the other wing. All right, guys, right wing is all done. The lens on the light is installed. I just used CA to install it in Kicker. The tip is installed. Used 4 screws. They say in the manual to use 3. There's plenty of extra screws, so just put 2 on the top, 2 on the underside. And the panel cover is installed as well too. That's basically it. That's the right wing. Done.